Billy Vance had a pheromone disorder, and I wanted a baby, so we were forced into a contract marriage. On our wedding night, I tied him up and forcibly treated him. He gritted his teeth and called me shameless. I ignored him and just got to work. Once I finally got pregnant and his disorder was cured, I brought up divorce. But suddenly, he wasn't having it. I'm a pretty average omega. I've always wanted a baby of my own. Unfortunately, sperm banks are expensive, and after years of saving, I was still nowhere close. Just as I was thinking about finding an alpha to father a child, the Vance family came knocking. When Caleb Vance and his assistant, Mr. Hayes, explained why they were there, I thought it was a scam. The youngest son of the Vance family, Billy Vance, was a top-tier alpha. And apparently, his pheromones were a 98.5% match with a regular omega like me. Not only that, but the Vances were proposing marriage. Who would ever believe a story like that? Seeing my disbelief, Mr. Hayes handed me a contract. Caleb spoke up. I heard that you, Mr. Wilson, submitted a matching application to the pheromone registry, so I assume you're open to marriage? My younger brother is currently the most compatible alpha for you. I didn't nod, asking hesitantly, is Billy Vance really willing to marry me? Would a top-tier alpha just accept an arranged marriage with an average omega like that? Don't rich people usually go for strategic alliances and power couple marriages? Why was the Vance family suddenly following pheromone compatibility? Caleb explained, to be honest, my brother has a pheromone disorder. Only the most compatible omega can help treat him. So it was for treatment. Billy had to marry me whether he wanted to or not. Mr. Hayes pushed the contract toward me again. Caleb's tone was gentle, but it held a hint of a threat. Mr. Wilson, I sincerely hope you'll consider my proposal. Under their intense, unblinking gazes, I took the contract. Mr. Hayes quickly handed me a photo of Billy. For a second, my heart skipped a beat. A gorgeous alpha, $1 million. Hesitating for even a second would be an insult to myself. I nodded decisively. Okay, I'm in. Turns out I celebrated too soon. I don't agree to this. Billy loudly voiced his displeasure, not even giving me a pleasant look. So the Vances hadn't even gotten him on board yet. I sat across from him awkwardly, taking a long sip of juice. Mr. Hayes wiped the sweat from his brow and explained patiently, we've already made the arrangements with Mr. Wilson. It's just to help you with your treatment. As soon as you're cured, you'll get a divorce. Is that so? Billy shot me a meaningful look and pursed his lips. Who knows if someone will be so quick to sign divorce papers once they've gotten their claws into the Vance family fortune. Mr. Hayes opened his mouth, then closed it, at a loss for words. I understood their concern. After all, from their perspective, why would a regular omega who suddenly married into a wealthy family ever let go so easily? But for me, marriage was completely optional. I'd actually regretted submitting that application to the registry right after I did it. I just wanted a baby. I didn't need anything else. That's why I was trying to save up for single parenthood. The application was non-retractable, so I just ignored it. Who knew it would actually match me with a highly compatible alpha? And that he'd have a pheromone disorder that required an omega's help to cure. If the Vances hadn't offered so much money, and if Billy's genes weren't so top quality, I wouldn't have wanted to get married in the first place. I sighed and said softly, don't worry, Mr. Vance. I signed the contract. We'll divorce on the agreed-upon date. Of course, if your condition is cured ahead of schedule, and if I get pregnant sooner, then we can get the divorce early. I'd laid all my cards on the table. That, combined with the pressure Caleb was putting on Billy over the phone, made him reluctantly nod in agreement. Mr. Hayes let out a sigh of relief. Great, I'll take you both to City Hall. After getting our marriage license, Billy and I were driven to our new house. Mr. Hayes helped bring all the luggage into the master bedroom. The moment he left, Billy immediately started moving his things out of the master and into another room. When he was done, he spoke, a bit uncomfortably. Agreeing to this marriage was just to humor them. Don't take it seriously. And I don't need you to treat my condition. What was I supposed to do? He wanted to sleep in a separate room. And he didn't want my help with his treatment. How was I supposed to treat him then? The money was already in my account. I couldn't just break the contract. More importantly, I needed to get pregnant with my adorable baby. I went back to the master bedroom, lost in thought, plotting how to begin the treatment. An hour later, I snuck downstairs to grab a delivery order. When I came back up, Billy had shut himself in the study. I waited until late at night. Finally, he emerged. Pretending I couldn't see clearly in the dark, I stumbled right into his arms. Billy sneered. "You think a pathetic move like that is going to seduce me?" I didn't answer, just lowered my head and rubbed my forehead. "Stop faking. It doesn't hurt that much." Suddenly, Billy's expression changed. He looked at me as if I were a mortal enemy. "Leo, what is that smell on you?" I glanced down at the item in my hand, confused. Weird. I hadn't even sprayed the pheromone inducer yet. How could he already smell it? Billy steadied himself against the wall, beads of sweat on his forehead. His eyes were hazy but glared at me fiercely. "Damn it, what did you do to me?" His own pheromone disorder was making him go into heat first. It had nothing to do with me. I discreetly tossed the inducer aside and grinned. "Helping you with your treatment." I kicked open the bedroom door and half-pushed, half-carried Billy before throwing him onto the bed. While he was still dazed, I pulled out a pair of handcuffs and methodically cuffed his wrists to the headboard. Billy's body went stiff, his face a mask of shock. "What are you doing? We're both adults. You don't know how the treatment works?" I had no intention of wasting my breath on him. I stripped off his clothes in a few quick motions. A fresh, fruity scent burst from him, so thick it was almost suffocating. "And you said you weren't willing. Your pheromones are already out." I took a sniff. "Lychee. So sweet. Don't smell me." Billy was furious, his chest heaving as he cursed me out. "Leo, you're taking advantage of me. You're shameless. You're a total pervert. What kind of omega acts like you?" I took a deep breath, fighting the instinctual shiver caused by the alpha pheromones, and leaned in closer. Billy turned his head away, his face a billboard of resistance. But his Adam's apple bobbed uncontrollably, and his scent only grew stronger. "Save your breath, little Billy," I said, lightly patting his cheek. "You'll want to save your energy for what's important." Billy let out a cold laugh, his dark gaze locking onto my neck. A strange feeling crept over me. I frowned and pulled out the bite guard I'd bought along with the inducer. Alphas find it hard to control their biological instinct to mark an omega in bed. Billy was cuffed, so he couldn't make any big moves. But just in case, I put it on him. "Scared now?" Billy stopped struggling and sneered. "You think I'd bite just any omega? Get over yourself. You could be standing naked in front of me and I wouldn't feel a thing. Is that so?" My hand slid down his abs and I gave a gentle squeeze. Billy's muscles tensed, and he glared at me, lips pressed into a thin line. I smiled and let go. "This part of you seems to be telling a different story. And I still have my clothes on. I haven't even taken off my scent blocker." Billy's face instantly turned bright red, and he retorted defensively, "I have a pheromone disorder. You know that? It's not like I can control this. You must have done something to me, MMPH. I'd had enough and clamped a hand over his mouth. So noisy. He was being so fussy for a simple treatment. "All right, that's enough talk. Let's just get this over with." In the dimly lit room, the AC was cranked way down, but I was still sweating buckets from the effort. I felt like I was about to drown in his pheromones. At some point, Billy's curses were gradually replaced by soft panting. I looked up curiously. He was flushed, staring down at me in a daze. The moment our eyes met, he flinched and quickly looked away, complaining, "Leo, can you please uncuff me? This is uncomfortable." "No." Billy shifted, and the edge of the handcuffs chafed a red mark onto his wrist. I ignored it, my hip so sore I could barely hold myself up. I had to stop and take a break. "Tired already?" I shot him a glare. It was only because he was so slow. I thought this would be over in a few minutes. Billy was stuck in limbo and tried to bargain with me. "How about I take over? You can just lie there. That way you won't be tired." I rejected him without a second thought. If I let an alpha like him take charge, we'd be at it until dawn. It was better to keep control in my own hands. When we were done, I collapsed back onto the bed, exhausted. I unlocked his handcuffs, signaling that he could leave. Billy rubbed his wrists, indignant. "This is my room. You're the one who should get out." I opened my eyes and looked around. I belatedly realized this was the guest room Billy had spent all that time setting up. But I was too tired to move. "Billy, I'll graciously lend you my room for one night." "Whose house is this anyway?" Furious, Billy threw his clothes at me. I couldn't be bothered to deal with him anymore. I just grabbed his shirt, hugged it, and went to sleep. A moment later, Billy stormed out, muttering shameless as he left. After that, Billy avoided me for a whole week. I didn't see him during the day, and he never came home at night. If this kept up, how long would it take for me to finish my mission and get out of here? Just as I was stressing about the treatment and getting pregnant, an opportunity finally presented itself. I was getting ready for bed when the phone rang. On the other end, I could hear Billy's extremely unsteady breathing, mixed with the sound of loud music and voices. "Leo," he said, his voice low and hoarse. "Can you come pick me up? My pheromone disorder is acting up." I raised an eyebrow, retorting instead of answering. "Oh? I thought you said you didn't need my help with your treatment." "Cut the crap," he snapped, his voice rising like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "I sent you the address. Just get over here, quick." An opportunity like this was rare. I rushed over to the location. Outside the private room stood a few young guys, looking helpless. When they saw me, they looked completely baffled. "You are..." I hesitated for a second before nodding. Billy called and asked me to come. I even showed them my call log. They exchanged shocked glances and hurried to open the door for me. The second the door opened, a wave of lychee scent hit me, so strong it almost made my knees buckle. Billy was huddled in a corner. As if sensing my presence, he suddenly opened his eyes and looked up at me. His voice was unbelievably hoarse, his tone aggrieved. "What took you so long?" I ignored his complaint and bent down, offering a hand. "Can you walk?" As I got closer, his breathing grew heavier, his eyes filled with a struggling look. "I don't need you." "Fine then." I made a move to pull my hand back. "Don't go." His body reacted faster than his brain. Billy lunged forward and grabbed me. He pulled with so much force that I fell right into his arms. A searing heat mixed with a dense cloud of pheromones pressed down on me without asking. He was holding me so tight I could barely breathe. I struggled a bit. "Billy, you..." "Don't go." Billy stood up, still holding me, his nose brushing against the side of my neck as he took several deep breaths. After a moment, he asked, "Are you not wearing a scent blocker?" "Of course I am." I checked. The blocker was perfectly in place. Billy didn't believe me and fumbled around my neck to check, muttering, "It smells so strong." I replied, "Then why don't you let me go?" In response, the tall human limpet just hugged me tighter. Billy passed out in the car. After I finally managed to drag the walking lychee back home, I hadn't even closed the door when I was suddenly slammed against the wall. Why can't I smell it anymore? A hand urgently reached for the back of my neck, trying to rip off the scent blocker. Immediately after, the oppressive feeling of an out-of-control alpha washed over me. Caught off guard, he kissed me right on the lips. Time seemed to stop for a second. I frantically turned my head to dodge him. Billy froze in place, still leaning in for the kiss. He asked, annoyed, "Why are you dodging? Didn't you say you were going to treat me? Why won't you let me kiss you?" I pushed him back a little and answered with a straight face, "Kiss you? The contract says nothing about providing kissing services." His tall frame completely enveloped me in shadow. Meeting his furious gaze, my scalp tingled, and I swallowed hard. Billy tilted my chin up and said with righteous indignation, "I don't care what the contract says. You tied me to the bed for something way more intimate without even asking my opinion. What's wrong with me wanting a kiss now?" As he spoke, a storm of lychee scent crashed down on me. Billy's kiss was demanding and possessive, falling on me with urgency. The scent blocker on my neck was gone, and he kneaded my gland until it trembled. The scent of roses instantly filled the air, tangling with the lychee. As a cool breeze hit my skin, my rational mind struggled to break free from the overwhelming heat of desire. Wait a second. I fumbled to protect my pants, my voice trembling. No treatment today. No scent blocker. No bite guard. This was going to be a disaster. I just wanted a baby. I didn't want to throw my entire self into this. Repeatedly denied what he wanted. Billy frowned in annoyance. Does it have to be that way? Before I could even process what he meant by that way, I just nodded frantically. Yes. Billy scooped me up and rushed inside. I was still in a daze when he tossed me onto the bed. I wasn't the one who said no treatment. The next second, the crisp sound of metal clinking echoed clearly in the room. I turned my head to look. Billy had cuffed his own wrist to the headboard. He held his chin high, his eyes darting around, refusing to look at me. His voice was muffled. Is this okay now? Seeing him go all out like this, I almost burst out laughing. I suppressed my smile. Didn't you tell me to give up hope before? Billy simply clammed up. He impatiently hooked his leg around my waist, pulling me down toward him. This was a golden opportunity. The baby was the priority. I obediently straddled him. The air in the room grew hot and humid. The two intertwining pheromones were so thick you could practically squeeze water out of them. This treatment session went much more smoothly than the last one. But without the bite guard, it was also far more out of control. In the heat of the moment, Billy couldn't stop himself from burying his face in my neck. His hot breath on my gland sent shivers down my spine. No biting. I panted, grabbing his hair and pulling him away. Billy snapped back to his senses for a moment, giving me a look of pure struggle. In your dreams, who'd want to mark you? That was for the best. But later, when I got up to leave just like last time, a hand grabbed me and pulled me back. Somehow, Billy had broken free from the handcuffs. Meeting his insatiable gaze, my eyelids twitched. The world spun, and suddenly, I was the one pinned beneath him. The person behind me pressed against my body, tilting my face to kiss me. The moment our pheromones mingled, my breath shattered. An omega's strength is no match for an alpha's. I couldn't escape his hold, and a sense of unease grew within me. Billy, don't you dare do anything crazy. What am I doing that's crazy? He placed a reassuring kiss on my gland and whispered, Didn't you say you were going to treat me? How could that little bit of pheromones possibly be enough? Almost 2 months passed by in a blur. Billy's attitude had shifted from initial resistance to outright eagerness. He'd rush me back to the bedroom as soon as the time was right. The second we were in the room, he'd pull me onto the bed. With the increased frequency of the treatment, his pheromones had clearly stabilized a lot. But my belly still hadn't shown any signs of anything. Still no baby. It got to the point where I started to wonder if something was wrong with Billy. But our medical report said we were both fine. I could only search for solutions online. Halfway through my search, Billy came home. There's a party this weekend, he said casually, his eyes darting toward me. You should come with me. I refused. Our marriage was purely transactional, no feelings involved. Why would I go to a party with him? I didn't have the right. Besides, I had no idea how to handle those kinds of situations. The air was quiet for a few seconds. Billy walked right up to me. You're my omega. If you don't go, who will? Instead of answering, I shot back. Weren't you the one who said we couldn't let anyone know about our relationship? Billy opened his mouth, speechless for a moment. Finally, he rubbed his nose, looking unnatural, and mumbled, My pheromones are almost stable. I need you with me at all times right now. What if all our progress is lost? He had a point. I reluctantly agreed. The ballroom was a sea of glamorous dresses and clinking glasses. In a complete change of pace, Billy kept his arm around my waist, as if declaring his ownership. He took me to see his brother first. You're here? Caleb smiled at me. Just a few days ago, Billy was saying he didn't want you to come. Leo, Billy hasn't been bullying you, has he? Caleb, Billy yelped, the tips of his ears turning red. He wouldn't dare. I tried to pull away from Billy's grip, but he only held me tighter. Caleb watched us playfully bicker and told us with a laugh not to flaunt our love in front of him. The moment we were out of Caleb's sight, Billy let go of me. The sudden release brought me back to reality. I realized Billy only insisted on bringing me today to put on a show for his brother. I rubbed my cheeks, which were sore from smiling. Next time you want me to act, give me a heads up first. Billy, who was reaching for a dessert, paused. Act? What acting? I just shook my head and dropped the subject. Just then, a smirking alpha holding a glass of wine sauntered over. Billy, aren't you going to introduce us? This is... His eyes landed on me, and he looked me up and down without any pretense. Billy put his arm back around my waist, about to speak. I cut in first. I'm Leo, Billy's. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Friend. The moment the word left my mouth, I felt the person beside me stiffen. Just a friend. Huh? The alpha smiled and offered me a glass of champagne, gesturing for a toast. I'm Chad. I guess you could say I grew up with Billy. I didn't take the glass, instinctively glancing at the silent Billy beside me. He looked displeased, his brow furrowed. It made me glad I hadn't revealed our true relationship and created a misunderstanding. Billy suddenly whipped his head around to look at me, his voice cold and hard as he repeated, Friend? I gave a slow nod. Was saying we were friends not okay either? Should I have said we were business partners? Billy shot a warning glance at Chad. The usually sweet lychee scent now carried an oppressive weight. It made me feel extremely uncomfortable. Before I could figure out what was going on, Billy had already pulled me away. After dragging me away from Chad, Billy proceeded to give me the cold shoulder, which honestly was fine by me. I found a quiet corner and slowly savored a small milk pudding made by the Vance family chef. It was lychee rose flavored, sweet but not cloying. Why are you all alone over here? Where's Billy? Caleb's voice sounded beside me. He handed me a glass of juice, his gaze drifting over to where Billy was sulking in the distance. As if sensing our eyes on him, Billy glanced over. Across the crowd, his gaze landed precisely on his brother and me. Then he quickly looked away, his expression full of displeasure. What's gotten into him now? Caleb watched for a moment before it dawned on him. It's because Chad is here. Why? I asked, confused. Those two have never really gotten along. I sipped my juice and listened as Caleb told me about Billy. Ever since he was a kid, the more he cares about something, the more he wants it, the more awkward he gets about it. I gave a vague what Billy cared about, what he wanted. He never said, so I had no way of knowing. All I knew was that besides not getting along with Chad, he probably didn't want to be friends with me, either. I still needed to help him cure his pheromone disorder as quickly as possible, and get pregnant soon, and divorce him soon. Leo, Caleb said in a gentle tone, you and Billy are getting along much better than I expected. As his older brother, I'm very happy. If he does anything wrong or makes you feel upset, just tell me. I'll teach him a lesson for you. Okay, then I'll thank you in advance, big brother. Swallowing the last bite of cake, I looked over at the sulking alpha. The little bit of annoyance I felt from his cold shoulder gradually faded away. Before the party ended, Caleb, true to his word, dragged Billy away for a talking to. I looked up at the second-floor balcony. The two brothers stood side by side. One had a serious expression. The other looked utterly dejected. A short while later, Billy came back down, looking miserable. He grabbed an untouched glass of champagne from a table and downed it in one go. He walked past me and said sullenly, "Let's go. We're leaving." In the car, the enclosed space filled with the faint scent of pheromones, mixed with a hint of alcohol. Billy leaned back against the seat with his eyes closed, his breathing a little heavier. The ride was silent. The driver parked the car in the garage and went home for the night. I thought Billy was asleep, so I didn't rush to wake him. Instead, I quietly studied his face. I'd never really gotten a good look at him before. Looking now, the photo Mr. Hayes had given me was completely unedited. Billy was genuinely handsome. His features were so fine and beautiful it was hard to look away. I found myself unconsciously picturing what our child would look like. It was as if a beautiful little baby was already waving at me, speaking in a soft voice, "Cuddle, hiss." Isn't that voice a little too deep for a baby? Wait, I looked down. A fuzzy, warm, large head had suddenly appeared in my lap. Just like that, the dream was over. But in reality, there was a big alpha asking for cuddles. His body temperature was a little high, and the moment he leaned on me, I started sweating. I pushed him away forcefully. What cuddles? We're home. Get out of the car. Billy squinted up at me. His eyes were clear but hazy and shimmering with moisture. An unnatural blush spread across his cheeks. His voice was low. My pheromone disorder, I think it's acting up again. In the cramped car, there was no escaping the pheromones. The scent wasn't strong, not at an out-of-control level. I held down his restless hands. Stop lying. Your pheromones are fine. I paused deliberately, my gaze dropping lower, and added with a smile, and I don't think you can do much when you're drunk. Can you? Just go to bed, little Billy. With that, I made a move to open the door and get out. I heard some rustling behind me, followed by a dissatisfied humph. Who says? With a sudden pull, he yanked me backward. I tumbled right into his arms. No, you've been drinking, it'll affect the quality. Before I could finish, his kiss stopped my words. As our lips and tongues tangled, the sticky, wet sounds fermented in the confined space. Even the car windows fogged up. I grabbed helplessly at the seat, but my hands found nothing, until a large hand reached over. His fingers forced their way between mine, lacing them together. Only then did I finally settle down, sinking into the sweet lychee scent. As my head spun, I heard someone whisper beside me, "Leo, why don't we give us a try?" I didn't answer, so he just kept tormenting me. In the end, I could only nod vaguely in agreement. Who knew that would only make him more excited? Afterward, I put his words out of my mind. It was just something impulsive, he said, high on pheromones. Who would take that seriously? All I knew was, the baby I had been dreaming of was finally on its way. For the past few days, the smell of greasy food had been making me nauseous. It wasn't until today that I slowly realized, this wasn't a stomach bug. I might be pregnant. I rushed out to buy a pregnancy test. Sure enough, 2 lines. Worried the result might not be accurate, I went to the hospital for a blood test. The result confirmed it. The baby was here. Right now, the most important thing was to cure Billy's condition quickly. That way, I could happily take my baby somewhere else and live a wonderful life. Tucking away the pregnancy report, I went to the pheromone and glandular health department to find Billy. He was also at the hospital for a checkup today. When I arrived, the doctor was examining Billy's glands. Mr. Hayes was waiting outside. When he saw me, he shared the results of the pheromone test. Mr. Wilson, the young master's pheromones have stabilized. My eyes widened in disbelief. Billy's pheromone disorder is cured? Mr. Hayes nodded, a wide smile on his face. The young master is still having his glands checked, but it's pretty much a sure thing. Now that his pheromones are stable, the symptoms of the disorder are definitely gone. The timing was too perfect. I had just found out I was pregnant today, and Billy just happened to get the all clear on his pheromones. It was a double dose of good news. I suppressed my excitement and waited for Billy outside the door. A little while later, he came out of the exam room. He looked well, a sense of relief washing over him. When he saw me, his gaze faltered. "What are you doing here?" I was nearby, so I stopped by. My eyes fell on his neck. The skin around his glands was red from the examination. "Mr. Hayes said your condition is cured? You don't want me to get better quickly?" Billy studied me, as if trying to read something on my face. Of course not. I was the one who couldn't wait for him to get better. But Billy wasn't as happy as I expected. In fact, he seemed even more displeased. "Leo, you're lying, aren't you?" "Huh?" I was completely lost. Before Mr. Hayes could even get the final report, Billy strode out of the hospital. I didn't know if I should follow him or not. I quickly texted Mr. Hayes and hurried after him. The car ride home was suffocatingly silent. I didn't get it. His condition was cured. Shouldn't he be happy? What was he so moody about? I watched the cityscape roll by and suddenly remembered what happened when we first met. Back then, Billy didn't want to get married. He was worried I'd cling to the Vance family and refuse to divorce him. So, was that why he was unhappy now? The car pulled into the underground garage and stopped. Billy grabbed my hand and led me quickly toward the house. Seeing the gloominess in his posture, I decided to make him truly happy. Billy, I cleared my throat, since your condition is cured. Billy whipped his head around, looking at me with hope in his eyes. He was definitely waiting for me to bring up the divorce. I smiled lightly and said, we should prepare for our divorce in the next couple of days, according to the contract. Thump. I was suddenly pinned against the door. Billy's face was dark. Leo, what did you just say? Say it again. I blinked, confused by the situation. A divorce. Weren't you worried I would drag my feet and refuse to divorce you? Now that your pheromone disorder is cured, my job is done. As agreed, it's time for us to end this. Billy let out a sharp, humorless laugh, his lychee scent turning thick and oppressive. Why do you get to decide when things start and when they end? He grabbed my wrist, his voice filled with anger. I don't agree. Isn't this supposed to be mutual? I struggled to pull my hand back. Don't forget, this was a contract marriage. We both got what we wanted. Now that your condition is cured, we go our separate ways. Isn't that perfect? Billy, don't tell me you're thinking of backing out. At that, Billy fell completely silent. He pressed his lips together, his jaw tight, as if trying to suppress something. I took the chance to pull my hand free. Staring at the tall figure blocking my way, I was stuck. After a long moment, Billy asked in a hoarse voice, what if I am? I pretended not to understand. What? Billy's eyes welled with a sense of grievance as he stared into mine. Leo, that day I said we should give it a try, and you clearly agreed. You're the one backing out now, aren't you? How could I have possibly agreed to try? If I stayed any longer and they found out I was pregnant, it would be a disaster. The contract never mentioned anything about children. Now that I'd secretly gotten pregnant, if the Vances found out I had my own agenda while treating him, they'd probably try to take the baby. That was absolutely not an option. I softened my tone, pleading, can't we just part on good terms? The contract states very clearly, once the condition is cured, all you talk about is the contract. Billy cut me off, his expression agitated. If I tear up the contract right now, do you think it'll still be valid? Well, of course it would still be valid. Billy sneered, his eyes sharp as they bore into me. Leo, you're in such a hurry to divorce me. Besides the contract, could there be another reason? His gaze slowly drifted downward, and he asked casually, you're not hiding something from me, are you? My heart skipped a beat. No, I couldn't stay here any longer. If I stayed even a few more days, they would definitely find out about the baby. With trembling hands, I quickly packed my bags and tiptoed out the door. Just as I stepped out of the elevator, I ran into Billy's nemesis. Chad was tossing his car keys in the air, asking flippantly, Mr. Wilson, where are you off to? Need a ride? Before I could answer, a chilling voice came from behind me. Leo, you asked me for a divorce, and now you're rushing out with your bags in the middle of the night. Is it for him? Chad, ever the pot stirrer, raised his voice. That's right. I came here specifically to pick him up. You shut up. Billy roared at him. He turned back to me, grabbing my arm. The force was so strong it felt like he was about to crush my bones. My suitcase clattered to the floor. An out-of-control wave of lychee pheromones crashed down as Billy, looking both furious and hurt, demanded, Leo, answer me. It's not what you think. I tried to pull free, my voice trembling. I barely even know him. Chad, reveling in the chaos, said with a playful smirk, Mr. Wilson, that's so hurtful. Get the hell out of here. With a powerful move, Billy swept me up into his arms. The elevator ascended. Billy's jaw was clenched, and a low pressure radiated from him. Once inside the apartment, he locked the door behind him and tossed me onto the sofa. His shadow fell over me. Barely know him? Billy asked through gritted teeth. Do you take me for a fool, Leo? If you barely know him, why would he come pick you up in the middle of the night? How was I supposed to know he'd be downstairs? I was so frustrated. I was just trying to run away while Billy was gone. How could I have known I'd run into his rival? and that he'd be a gleeful troublemaker trying to get involved. I was just trying to leave. We're getting a divorce, after all. Running into him was a complete accident. My eyes started to sting for some reason. I wiped them as a dull ache started in my lower abdomen. Leave? Billy's eyes darkened. Why leave? Just because I won't agree to a divorce, you're that desperate to get away from me? He leaned in closer, trapping me on the small sofa with nowhere to go. At the party, you said we were friends. I mentioned giving us a try, and you try to run away in the middle of the night. Leo, do you hate me that much? Hate him? Not at all. On the contrary, after spending all this time together, I'd pathetically lost control of my own heart. If I wasn't worried that the Vances would take my baby, I might have been willing to give things a try with him. I looked up. Billy was glaring at me, looking like he'd been abandoned. I don't hate you. We just have a contract, I reminded him weakly. Billy clicked his tongue and suddenly lowered his head, kissing me. The oxygen was stolen from my lungs, my whimpers swallowed. He gnawed at my lips, his tongue aggressively prying my mouth open. I pushed against his chest, but his body heat burned my hands. It wasn't until his hand on my waist grew more and more restless that I frantically pushed him away. No, not right now. My baby is too precious. Billy didn't seem annoyed by the rejection at all. Instead, he smiled. He slowly picked something up from the coffee table. Is it because of this? I took a closer look, and my face instantly went pale. My hand instinctively flew to my stomach. He knew. His expression shifted from disbelief to pure joy. Billy carefully reached out, his fingers brushing the back of my hand on my belly. So, his throat bobbed, his voice strained. You were in a rush to divorce me, to run away. Because of this? I hesitated before nodding, my heart pounding in my chest. Billy knew. Did the Vances know? If they found out, what would their attitude be? Would they make me get an abortion? Or would they let me have the baby and then take it for the family? Why would you run away if you're pregnant? Billy asked in a low voice. Were you afraid I'd find out? Afraid I'd take the baby? What else was I supposed to think? I had gotten pregnant in secret, after all. This is my baby. I pushed his hand off my stomach. Mine alone. The contract never mentioned a baby, so you just assumed I would take him? I just numbly said, yeah. After a moment of silence, Billy took a deep breath and gently pulled me into his arms. The sweet lychee scent wrapped around me securely. It gave me a sense of security I had never felt before. Judging by his reaction, he wasn't going to take the baby, right? Contracts are just paper. People are real. Billy sighed. How could you not even ask? How could you be so sure I would try to take the baby? Leo, did it never occur to you that we don't have to get a divorce? Really? But would the Vance family allow it? You're a top-tier alpha, the young master of the Vance family. And me? I'm just an ordinary omega. I even sold my pheromones for money. Once your condition is completely cured, how could your family possibly agree to this marriage? They'll definitely want you to marry a top-tier omega from a family of equal standing. The more I spoke, the colder my heart grew. I tried to push him away, but he held me even tighter. So tight it felt like he was trying to merge me with his own body. A gap? Billy frowned. Aren't all people equal when it comes to love? My brother was a bit pushy at the beginning, but he was pressuring me, not you. What's there to be afraid of? My family doesn't have that many rules. As long as I'm happy, that's all that matters. He gently stroked the back of my head, his nose brushing against mine. Besides, if I divorced you, the first person to yell at me would be my brother. He really likes you as a brother-in-law. Do you remember that party? He pulled me aside and chewed me out, telling me I had to treat you well. Of course, I remembered that night. Caleb had scolded Billy right in front of me. Billy just had to stand there and take it, sulking. He didn't dare do anything else. So now, I glanced at the pregnancy report, hesitating. Now there's no way you're getting away. Billy's tone became completely self-assured. We even have a baby on the way. If I bring up divorce now, my brother would kill me. I opened my mouth, my heart pounding. This turn of events was not what I had imagined. Felt unreal. If you don't believe me, I'll call my brother right now." As he spoke, Billy pulled out his phone and started scrolling through his contacts in front of me. "Don't." I slapped my hand over his, terrified. "You just let me think." "What's there to think about?" Billy buried his face in my neck, his voice turning clingy. "Leo, I like you. Can we not get a divorce? Please?" I didn't answer, so he just kept asking over and over again, tirelessly. Finally, I got so annoyed I couldn't take it anymore. I blurted out, "Fine, we won't get a divorce. Giving it a try couldn't hurt. If things didn't work out later, we could always get a divorce then." After we decided not to get a divorce, Billy became a completely different person. When we first got married, he was always cursing and trying to avoid me. Now, he practically wanted to be attached to my hip. He followed me everywhere I went. His beautiful excuses were that his pheromones needed continuous stabilization and that the baby needed an alpha's pheromones for comfort. In reality, he was just a stage 5 clinger. A few months later, our baby was finally born. Little Noah perfectly inherited his alpha father's premium genes. His face hadn't fully matured yet, but he was incredibly beautiful. It made me reflect every time that agreeing to the Vances contract marriage was one of the best decisions I ever made. A sperm bank couldn't have given me genes as good as Billy's. However, the baby also inherited Billy's terrible temper. He cried when he was hungry, cried when he was sleepy, and cried when he couldn't fall asleep. His cries were loud and full of energy. Billy's face fell as he quietly complained to me, "It's definitely because you tried to run away back then. He thinks I hurt your feelings, so now he's deliberately torturing me." Billy looked utterly defeated as he tried to soothe the baby, but he was also completely blissed out. Listening to him hum an out-of-tune lullaby over and over, I couldn't help but chuckle. I was so glad I agreed not to divorce Billy. Otherwise, I would never have been able to handle this alone. And I was so glad the Vances chose me, and that I said yes to them.